What's going on, everybody? RJ Ochoa here from SB Nation's bloggingtheboys.com. Hope all is well wherever you are. Hope you're happy, safe, healthy, and that you know, whatever, that it's starting to feel okay, that you've licked your wounds, and that we're able to kind of feel and compartmentalize and discuss and hang out, and chart a path forward. And honestly, I think that we can chart a path forward. I think that this is as good as I have felt about the Cowboys in some time. I know that sounds like a cope because they lost, but I think there's a lot to unpack, which is exactly what we're here to do. Today is Friday, September 5th, 2025. A reminder to please like the video, subscribe to the Blog on the Boys YouTube channel. I'm here every day talking Cowboys, all sorts of videos, live shows, live post-game shows after each and every single Dallas Cowboys game. The post-game show from this week, the Cowboys 24-20 loss to the Eagles, obviously on the channel if you want to go watch it. You can also hang out with me on social media, X, Instagram, Threads at RJ Ochoa, TikTok, RJ.Ochoa. RJ.Ochoa at SBNation.com is how you can find me on email as well. I've got the pups in the office with me. I've mentioned I've had some home construction going on, and so they've been out of it. They're excited to be in here. They're both sleeping soundly, and so hopefully we can all have a calm discussion without either Bear or Honey barking and disturbing things. But the Cowboys lost on Thursday night, and I really don't think that anyone is coping. I really, as we kind of get further and further and further from it. And it will feel a lot longer in the rearview mirror after Friday night's game, after college football on Saturday, certainly after the Sunday slate and Sunday night football. There will be, more mistakes or more heroic moments made across the NFL in college football, as mentioned, that will make, certain things feel like they happened forever ago. That's the magic of the process and the way things go on a week-to-week basis. It does stink that we have to wait a little while and sit on this, obviously, with the Cowboys not playing again until next Sunday. But I think that allows us a fair amount of time to kind of examine what happened and sort our thoughts. And I always, put a lot of value, I think, into thoughts the day after. I did a whole series last year. This is kind of that, where I offered 3 thoughts I had about the Cowboys the day after each and every single game, because sometimes thoughts change, right? Like we all have different responses to different things in life, not just the Cowboys, obviously, where, you get a night's sleep and cooler heads prevail, maybe, or whatever the case may be. But today we're going to be talking winners and losers and just kind of next day thoughts. Is I really feel like, and I wrote about this at blogontheboys.com, I have not been this confident in or optimistic about the Cowboys in a very long time. And this was a common point of discussion across the entire offseason. And I've brought this up many times in conversations with you and obviously interviews that I've done that are on the channel as well, talking to people about the Cowboys projected win total for this season being at 7.5, at 8.5, and just saying that's not who they are. I know that it's easy for the, majority, the collective, to look at the Cowboys in 2024 and say, how do you expect them to be better? They were so bad last year. Well, I would offer that in 2024, their front office, as I say often, willfully sabotaged the team. So you kind of can't take 2024 seriously when you're evaluating who this team is or who this team is going to be. And I think that was proven on Thursday night. This team showed a lot of fight and more fight than I anticipated. And I thought the Cowboys would cover, which they ultimately did. The line of 7.5 or 8.5, if you were able to get that, was ridiculous. They never even trailed by that much. The largest margin the Cowboys trailed by was ultimately 4 points, which was the margin that they actually lost by. But beyond the fact that they covered, I anticipated the covering to be, kind of a high-scoring affair, and I think we were on track for that before the Lightning delay. I think it goes without saying, I also wrote about this, that really took the wind out of the sails for the whole game. There were no more points scored after that. It was 24-20 at the Lightning delay, right after the Miles Sanders fumble, and it obviously ended at 24-20 with both teams punting a bunch across the end of the third quarter and the entire fourth. But Brian Schottenheimer, I think, really stood tall and really kind of showed that he is somebody who knows what he's doing, somebody who can be trusted. I know I've said some things about Dak Prescott. I stand by that you have to put some onus on the quarterback for the offense not getting a single point in the second half. I recognize that we can and should put other players above him, well above him, CeeDee Lamb, Miles Sanders, Jake Ferguson, etc. For the offense to not have any points in the second half, I would put some onus on Brian Schottenheimer as well, in spite of the fact that I think it was an incredible debut for him. But I think that last year felt just so devastating in every way. Every week was was just a constant reminder at the tumultuous ride we were on. We were strapped in, we were stuck. We had to watch the whole thing weekly, and it felt like at every turn it got more toxic, whether it was Jerry arguing with the host on the fan or the piece of metal falling from the sky ahead of the Monday Night Football game against Houston. It felt like a joke. It felt like the worst reality show possible. There are good reality TV shows. It felt like the worst one. And this feels very different. I would say, to answer my own question, that this is the most excited I have felt, even though they lost. And so I can't imagine how I would have felt if they'd managed to win this game. I think we would, really be celebrating here on what would have been a victory polo Monday. But this is the most excited, the answer I've landed on, I feel or have felt about the Cowboys since they beat the Lions in the penultimate week of the 2023 regular season. That was when everything felt like they could do no wrong. And it felt like fate was smiling upon them the way they pulled that game off, and they got lucky with the, ineligible reporting and all that stuff. They went to Washington the week later and secured the NFC East, but we kind of knew that game was somewhat serious, but not totally serious. And then everything fell off in the playoff loss to the Packers. This is kind of, I guess, to put it a different way, this game against the Eagles, even though the Cowboys lost, this felt like the first breath that the franchise took since the playoff loss to Green Bay. It has felt like they have just been underwater, drowning this entire time, and actually sinking further and further and further into the ocean. But this game felt like the first time that they came up for air, and they put some of that in their lungs, and they have a lot to work with now moving forward. It really was that refreshing in a lot of ways, again, even though they lost. And it was refreshing because Brian Schottenheimer, again, the highest point of leadership in the organization as the head coach and offensive play caller, looked like he knew what he was doing, because the offense looked incredible before the delay, because the defense stood tall after the delay. Maybe you believe the delay was a part of that, but ultimately the fact that this team went toe to toe with the reigning world champs on banner night and whatever other narratives you want to add, that they were able to come out of the delay and stick their foot in the ground and give their offense a chance. Those are things that bode really well across the rest of this regular season. And so I anticipate there to be future breaths, for the Cowboys. I don't think that they're submerging for the foreseeable future. I think that this is a team that finally understands how to operate, and maybe understands isn't the right word. There were a lot of decisions made by leadership last year for the Cowboys that inhibited a lot of these potential sort of things, but it was just really nice, I think, to see the Cowboys be a proper NFL team, because it had been a very long time since we'd seen that. Now, that being said, there were some notable performances, some less than notable performances, and we're here to discuss winners and losers. So let's get to the winners. I've got a list here, as you can see. I've obviously discussed Brian Schottenheimer. I think Javonte Williams is a clear winner. I don't know how we can, overlook that. We'll discuss them in a moment here. The two Tylers, I've got Tyler Booker and Tyler Guyton there. And I think when you do winners and losers, or you do a stock report after a game, it's contextual, right? Like, winner is relative to what we expected from you, right? We hold star players to different standards than we do, rookies or players on rookie deals. And I think that's exemplified by the way that people are feeling about CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is one of the very best players on the team. And so that's why he has to come up big in big moments. And so, again, I think that context matters. I don't know that it was the best game that we'll ever see from either Tyler Booker or Tyler Guyton, but to stand tall for Tyler Booker to not be a total disaster in his debut as an NFL rookie. Now, it should be said that Jalen Carter was ejected, obviously, at the very beginning of this game. And I think for Tyler Guyton to play well despite, missing so much time. And remember, there was that 30-minute window where we thought his season was completely and totally over. I think that they definitely deserve some attaboys. So I've got them on my winners list. I've got Marshawn Nealon here, despite the fact that he didn't draw a single holding penalty, even though he seemed to be held every other play by Lane Johnson. I think that's just kind of funny, and that's the way things go. Sam Williams, I think that, again, Sam and Marshawn get some of that contextual winner bump for me. This was always going to be a difficult game for them. Everyone was going to be measuring them against a hypothetical and Micah Parsons, and they showed up. They were legitimate contributors for this team and proved that they may be able to be the star pass rushers for this team, obviously, across the life of the 2025 season. And again, it's not just that Micah Parsons was gone. This was also the first game the Cowboys played without DeMarcus Lawrence in over a decade. Not in a literal sense, but obviously not being a part of the franchise. And so, I mean, to just bring in two brand new pass rushers, for two dudes to be the face of that position group now, and to have some very legitimate moments, I think they deserve some kudos as well. And finally, Kenny Clark, we rolled our eyes, and I maintained that the Cowboys just said things in the press conference after trading Micah Parsons, but they said that they wanted Kenny Clark to be a part of things because they wanted him to help them stop the run, that stopping the run was of extreme importance, and he delivered. And they deserve to feel vindicated in that sense. Shout out to Dashboard Confessional, obviously. I think Kenny Clark really, every, Green Bay beat writer has said what a professional he has been for the Packers organization. And I think he really, I mean, for only having been connected to the team for a week at the time of this game, to stand in and play as well as he did is really, really, really impressive. And so I think it's fair to be excited about Kenny Clark and what he's going to offer this team. And hopefully they're able to work out some sort of situation with him in the offseason. He's going to stick around for whatever this team looks like with all the draft capital that they have behind them now. But I want to talk about Javonte Williams. This was the most unforeseen thing to me as far as offensive production for the Cowboys. We expect Dak Prescott to do things. We expect CeeDee Lamb to do things. I recognize he did in this game, but nobody expected Javonte Williams to show up the way that he did. Now, he didn't set the world on fire, but he looked good. And I will put my hand up. I chastised the Cowboys for not playing Javonte Williams in the preseason. I said, what are you doing? What has this dude earned? How can you possibly be this confident? And we're only one game in, so I don't think we need to massively overreact, but one game in, they were proven right. One game in, Javonte Williams was proven to rightfully have earned the opportunity to be not only the team starting running back, but perhaps not play in the preseason. We can debate that back and forth however much you'd like. But he had 2 rushing touchdowns in his debut for the Cowboys. And I tried to look this up at Pro Football Reference and StatHead, my great friends over there, and I had some difficulty, but they are such great friends that they looked it up on their end for me. Javonte Williams is one of 2 players who in their Dallas Cowboys debut had 2 rushing touchdowns. The other one is Herschel Walker. That is some insane context. It doesn't mean anything. It isn't representative of anything. It doesn't mean the Cowboys are going to trade Javonte Williams for $1 million draft picks at some point in the future, but it is kind of cool. And I don't know that he's going to have 2 rushing touchdowns each and every single game, but the ultimate point is he was most impressive when he wasn't rushing those touchdowns in. I mean, Javonte Williams looked like somebody who can absolutely be a certifiable RB1 for this team over the life of this season. And so serious props to him, serious props to Clayton Adams, and serious props to the Cowboys offensive line, everybody for making this whole thing sing. They deserve a lot of kudos for making Javonte Williams. And obviously Javonte deserves a lot of credit himself. Look good. But I mentioned that, I've got Brian Schottenheimer here, and I obviously talked about him. I think that that's the most important thing. And that is the most inspiring thing as it relates to the future, as it relates to what this season's going to look like. The fact that they went punch for punch, went blow for blow with, a mighty team like the Philadelphia Eagles. The fact that they were in position to win, 3 different times, I think is a real testament to Brian Schottenheimer. And that's Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive play caller. I think that Brian Schottenheimer, the head coach, had just a very, very difficult task in navigating not just, the wake of the Micah trade, but this entire offseason. I mean, remember the way that the circumstances that were surrounding him when he was hired. I mean, everything was insane. And it was, just pure pandemonium and chaos. And Brian Schottenheimer stayed true to who he wanted to be. And we're only one game into his career as far as being the Cowboys head coach. And it was a loss, but I think that he proved, in this very small sample size that he is going, or at least he has the potential to be a part of the long-term solution for this franchise, which I don't know that any of us believed back in January when he was initially hired. And so that is exciting. And I think that it's nice to have a lot of winners and some new faces and some players, that the Cowboys believed in. It's nice to see them justified and vindicated. Like I said, that, Javonte Williams is a winner. I don't know that any of us would have anticipated that. Maybe Kenny Clark, you would have. It's nice to see, players like Marshawn Nealon and Sam Williams answer the call to be winners. And so I'm really pleased with the winners list, but the losers list is such a bummer and such a difficult thing to square and to talk about. CeeDee Lamb is clearly the biggest loser for the Cowboys. It was very un-CeeDee Lamb-like. I think that we're all still kind of, if we're in shock or in awe, in a negative way, obviously, about anything from this game, I think it's the performance of CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that any of us, if I had told you every single detail about this game, before it started, if I'd come back from the future and I'd said, yeah, CeeDee's going to, X, Y, Z, I think you would have had a very difficult time believing me. I think you would have said, I can buy that Javonte Williams is going to, whatever, but there's no way that you must be mistaken. There's no way that CeeDee Lamb is going to come up short and he's going to have these critical drops. It was just really, startling and troubling and frustrating, certainly. And there's no doubt about it. I think if you're assigning blame, you give him the biggest piece because of the opportunities that he had and that he ultimately wasn't able to capitalize on. Jake Ferguson as well, had that play. on what should have been a touchdown. You can certainly make the argument. I know a lot of people have. And I think that's, what's disappointing is I'm in no way counting anybody's, money, but you want the guys who you give the contract extensions to, the most notable players on your team, the most compensated players, again, not to get into the weeds on that front, but you want those guys to be the ones who deliver the most, right? Like, because forget the financial value, the literal nature of it, but you're paying those guys, you're keeping them around, you're giving them second contracts because you believe they can be the difference makers for your team. So when your second contract, your third contract, if you get to that point, when those players are the main primary reasons why you lose a game, it's just a bitter pill to swallow. And it's one game. And the reason you give those guys those deals is because you imagine them, being who you expect them to be over the life of that contract. But it was a bummer to see some of the second contract Cowboys not necessarily live up to that in the season opener in Philadelphia. I did have Miles Sanders on this list, and I mean, that kind of is obvious. And I know that the Jaden Blue commentary is running rampant, and I don't disagree with it, to be very clear. It's just it's tough. It's really tough to defend Miles Sanders, and I'm not necessarily looking to defend Miles Sanders, but I want to give him props for the big run that he had that put the team in the position that he ultimately fumbled away. But I shared that on social media, and I agree with everybody. He got caught on that play, and it's easy to assume that Jaden Blue wouldn't get caught, and so you do have to wonder what the Cowboys are doing there. It's funny how Javonte Williams was this like great surprise at the running back position, but Miles Sanders was in the worst moments what everybody expected him to be in terms of advocating for the Cowboys to keep, obviously, Jaden Blue, but even Phil Maffa. So that was a tough scene, and it will be interesting to see how the Cowboys navigate that, whether or not Jaden Blue gets any activity next week against the New York Giants. I had Jalen Tolbert on the list, which feels like picking on him. He had 2 targets and 1 reception for 0 yards. In a literal and technical, just straight factual way, he had multiple targets, caught at least one of them, and it had no yardage to show for it. In Dallas Cowboys franchise history, there are 12 occurrences, shout out to Pro Football Reference and StatHead, 12 occurrences of a player having multiple targets. Obviously, Jalen only had 2. Having at least 1 catch, Jalen had 1, and recording 0 yards. Jalen is the 12th player to do this. Most of the players who did this for the Cowboys are running backs or fullbacks, players out of the backfield, kind of catching screens or dump offs or check downs, whatever, and just getting tackled at the line of scrimmage or something. Interestingly, Marion Barber had a game where he had 4 targets, 3 receptions, and 0 yards. That was the one that stood out to me. But I think that I was always hesitant, and I've said this many times, to put Kevontae Turpin in the conversation as far as being a legitimate offensive weapon, just because he has such value on special teams. I don't want to damage that. I don't want him to be at his best, and that's just a conversation that you have out loud. But I don't think there's any doubt at this point that I've certainly been proven wrong already that Kevontae Turpin can help on offense. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that, and maybe you feel there wasn't any doubt here, but Kevontae Turpin is easily the 3rd best receiver on this team, right after CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Like, there's just no room for an argument that it's Jalen Tolbert right now. And you can make an argument certainly that the Cowboys should consider even giving Jonathan Mingo more opportunity than Jalen Tolbert at this point in time. That's not necessarily saying, like, trust me, there's a lot going on there, but this is year 4 for Jalen Tolbert, and he's not contributing a ton. He had the moment in Pittsburgh last year. Everybody will always be grateful for that, but you would like to see more, at least in a player's 4th year. Granted, there have been some changes, along the offense and some different acquisitions. Brandon Cooks has arrived and departed, and obviously George Pickens now. So I'm willing to say it's not 100% Jalen Tolbert's fault, but I also think that we're all willing to say that we've kind of seen enough at this point for the team to make a decision, and that's just kind of the reality of it all. I also had Kaiir Elam on the losers list, which is a bummer for me as a Gator, but he had the big surrender on Jahan Dotson, and that was tough. I mean, it's a tough thing to give up a massive 3rd down like that. I feel badly putting him on the list for a single play, but those are the plays, right? Like, if you pull off these massive 3rd downs, if you allow these massive 3rd downs, those are the things that swing games. And so that was a big one for the Cowboys that they ultimately gave up. And to Jahan Dotson, it wasn't like Devontae Smith made this play or something. It was Jahan Dotson. That was very strange. So those are my winners and losers. I do think that, like I said, day after thoughts are valuable. Day after thoughts are helpful. The introspection that you can kind of have, or if you want to do it externally, like I'm kind of doing right now, I think that it's always, interesting to kind of, talk amongst ourselves, talk to ourselves and say, okay, what do I feel most different about? That's the question I want to ask. What is the thing that you feel the most different about after you slept on this game than the way you felt about it in the immediate aftermath of it all? Because as I think about this, I think the thing that I feel the most different about is ultimately with regards to, the state of this defense. Because I feel, or at least I felt like the moment the game ended, I felt like, man, that was super impressive. And I stand by the fact that it was super impressive. But I think that it's important to not just look at what happened. And I think that we should be giving props, obviously, to everybody involved. But I guess my biggest afterthought is that the lightning delay had a lot to do with it. And the lightning delay makes reading into some things that happened after it difficult. Not impossible, but difficult. How much did the lightning delay have to do with the Cowboys offense cooling off? How much did the lightning delay have to do with the Eagles offense cooling off? And therefore, how much did it have to do with the Eagles defense improving and the Cowboys defense improving? I think these are fair questions to ask. And so I think it was an impressive effort, certainly from the Cowboys defense, to get the ball back, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times in a row for the Cowboys offense there as the game wound down. I'll be very interested to see what they look like in a couple of weeks, even next Sunday against the Giants. We don't know what they're going to look like, obviously, as a team. But I think that we're all really anxious to see what the Cowboys defense looks like against Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears in 2 weeks. Although, granted, we have yet to see Ben Johnson, obviously, as an NFL head coach because it's only Friday and the Bears play on Monday Night Football. But that's my biggest kind of like, and it's not really a thought change, but I'm willing to admit that there's a qualifier, that there's a bit of a caveat to evaluating what happened, because I just, the game was so potent offensively, right? There was, literally scoring on every single possession, right, up until the lightning delay, and then there were no points scored. So I think you have to be able, or you should be willing and able to say that the lightning had something to do with it, the delay, not the lightning itself. And that, what happened after it should be taken with a grain of salt in a particular way, while still giving credit where credit is due. Okay, so if you haven't yet, please subscribe here to the Blogging the Boys YouTube channel, like the video, tell a friend. Daily videos, all sorts of discussion. And tomorrow on Saturday, something that I started last year, or something that I started regularly last year, is making a return. Dallas Cowboys in Espanol is dropping on Saturday. It's a weird week, obviously, with the Cowboys having played on Thursday, but the traditional flow, the traditional schedule around here throughout the course of the regular season will be for our Madden simulations to drop on Friday. The week was condensed this week, obviously. And then for Dallas Cowboys in Espanol, which is me giving some thoughts on the Cowboys at that state in time in Spanish. I think that was obvious, but if it isn't, that will drop every Saturday throughout the season. So this week it'll be looking back at the Eagles game, but generally it'll be in anticipation of the game that's to come on Sunday or Domingo, obviously, to keep theme with Dallas Cowboys in Espanol. My name is RJ Ochoa. I love you all. It's going to be okay. I think this team is going to win somewhere between 9 and 11 games. Remember, we did not think they would win this game. I know that because they had it, it feels just tough to take because they should have had it, but we did not think they were going to win this one when we did all of our predictions. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. I can't wait to see you soon. In fact, I'll see you on Saturday in our Spanish video, and then we'll be back for more discussion. I wish you all the luck in the world with regards to your fantasy teams and your pick'ems and your survivors, all that fun stuff that's happening because the NFL is back and it is officially the best time of the year. Thanks so much for hanging out, everybody. And let's get out of here. Shout out to Bear and Honey for being good pups. We will see you next time.